We all remember Yao Ming as an unstoppable force at the center position. Standing at 7'6", Yao is one of the tallest basketball players in NBA history, and it is that ridiculous height that allowed him to score at will inside, allowed him to block opponent shots with ease, allowed him to become an 8-time All-Star and a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame. But it is also that 7'6" height that is the basis for this entire video. A video that will show you one of the craziest NBA conspiracies of all time. So what's up guys, Mike here, and yes, we are back with a new conspiracy. I know it's been way too long, but trust me, this video is going to be worth the wait because it's just so absurd. And the reason for that is that before this video is over, we are going to answer two questions. The first is, did the Chinese government create Yao Ming? And then the second is, did they use drugs to make him the best basketball player their country has ever seen? And real quick, I do want to say this video is sponsored by SeatGeek. Make sure to stick around until the end of the video so you can get $20 off a SeatGeek order. For now, before we get to Yao Ming's part in this story, we have to cover some basic facts first. During the 1950s, China decided they wanted to become a power in sports that people respected. They called this their gold medal strategy, and it was basically a win at all costs system. To give you an idea of just how serious they were, at the time, the man in charge of this program said, if we don't reach the highest level in the 3 big ball sports, those sports being soccer, volleyball, and basketball, I will never shut my eyes even after death. Which basically meant that he would never be at peace ever if China did not become a national power in volleyball, soccer, and basketball. From the moment it was introduced, this gold medal strategy was taken very seriously. From the moment this gold medal strategy was introduced, China began to take things to the extreme. In order to become a real power, they decided they needed a bigger talent pool, which meant Chinese officials began to scout the nation for young children that they decided had the best potential for sports. When they found a child that they liked, they would force that child to leave his or her home and dedicate his or her life to the sport that China chose. In the case of basketball, a national decree was made that any girl who was taller than 5'11" or any boy who could grow taller than 6'7" would be placed in the Chinese national basketball system. And so, due to this national decree, Yao Ming's 2 future parents were taken from their homes as children and forced to play basketball their entire lives. Then, even after their professional careers were over, their personal lives were still not their own, because in China, even after their professional careers were over, men and women were still expected or forced to dedicate their lives to China's athletic goals. As up until 2004, the sports system had a national law that all marriages must be approved by work unit leaders. This rule was in place strictly so that China could gain an even greater advantage in sports, which meant in order to advance their gold medal goals into the next generation, China would match men and women from their professional programs and arrange for them to get married in order to produce superior athletes. This is the system that of course gave China its ultimate prize, as despite the fact that Da Yao and Da Feng barely knew each other, they were the 2 tallest basketball players in Shanghai's system, so they were arranged to be married. And less than 1 year later, Yao Ming was born. Before we go any further, again, I just want to say, the Chinese government's system of arranged marriages between athletes was no secret. This means that Yao's parents being forced to marry is not the conspiracy here. The real conspiracy is just what China did when they realized what they had in Yao Ming. Because he was the son of 2 of China's tallest athletes, and because he was one of the biggest babies Chinese doctors could ever remember delivering, the Chinese government followed Yao's childhood every step of the way. In fact, from the second he was born, Yao Ming had no choice other than to try and become a professional basketball player. His parents did not want this. They wanted him to go to school full time. Yao did not want this. He remembers wanting to be an archaeologist. But again, the government was obsessed with becoming a power in the big ball sports, and so they forced their citizens to dedicate their lives to this cause. By the time he was just 8 years old, Yao was required to attend basketball practices 6 days a week. These were not normal practices. They were harsh even for professional athletes. Day in and day out, the players in Yao's program were forced to run until they couldn't breathe and shoot until they couldn't lift their arms. These practices would go on for hours, and players would often throw up or collapse on the court before they were allowed to stop practicing. And on top of this, coaches would routinely beat their players if they made mistakes. And it was a known fact that if you were injured or sick, you said nothing and you practiced anyway. Again, it was all about building the superior athlete. And these young kids soon found themselves brainwashed. As Lu Bin, a previous member of the Chinese sports program, remembers, sometimes we'd even ask for more hours of practice because we worried that we weren't being revolutionary enough. We were so naive. So, because he was born in China to two of the tallest people in the country, Yao Ming became a basketball player. And because he was forced to play basketball and was basically tortured at practice, Yao Ming grew up hating basketball. This meant nothing to the Chinese government. In fact, Yao's playing ability meant little to the Chinese government. At the age of 13, despite hours and hours of practice, Yao was still terrible. But that mattered very little to any of his coaches or anyone in the program, because at 13, Yao stood at 6 feet 6 inches tall. So despite his lack of skills at the time, the decision was made for Yao to leave his home and join the Shanghai Sharks junior basketball program full time. It was there that he continued to grow and finally develop as an athlete, and it was there that questions have to be asked. Before I go any further, I just want to say, if you're looking for an actual admission to the use of PEDs in their athletic programs from anyone in the Chinese system, you're not going to find one. What we do know, though, is this. During his time as a Shanghai Shark, Yao began to receive special attention from a man named Wei. In Wei's own words, he has said, "The leaders always gave me the cases that are hardest to solve. That's why they entrusted me with Yao Ming." When he first met Yao, we determined that Yao's body was lacking several key nutrients that were hurting his athletic performance. And so, immediately, we began experimenting, giving Yao his own nutritional concoctions that he felt would help Yao not only become a better athlete, but to grow even taller. When asked by a reporter what was in these drinks, we said that's a secret. So we don't know exactly what was in them. What we do know is that after joining the Shanghai Sharks and beginning to take these drinks, Yao's athletic ability improved tremendously. The kid who was once the worst basketball player in his program soon became the best player that China had ever seen. What we also know is that Wei himself has said that he believes his treatments caused Yao to grow 2 or 3 inches taller than he was supposed to grow. And what we also know is that during this time, we had an assistant named Dr. Yu, who was also a part of this process. And so when talking to the reporter that I mentioned before, Dr. Yu was also a part of explaining this process. And when Dr. Yu began to explain his part of the process, he brought up the word hormones. As soon as the word hormones came up, we interrupted Yu and the two had the following exchange. Yu, the hormone treatment, should we mention that? No. We shouldn't say anything about that. Don't confuse them like this. Yu, but it's a key aspect. Yes, but there's no need to mention it. Just tell them that they were herbal extracts. That's enough. Since this exchange took place, Wei has denied ever using hormone treatments on Yao Ming. But just listening to those words, should we mention the hormone treatment? No, don't say anything about that. Say they were herbal extracts. That exchange certainly seems very suspicious to say the least, especially when you consider the scandals that the Chinese sports system faced in general. As around the time that Yao was playing professional basketball in China, it appears that China's mentality to build the superior athlete and to win at all costs was taken to the next level. In 1994, 9 of the 23 3 gold medals that China won at the Asian Games were taken away due to failed drug tests. 4 years later, 24 athletes and coaches in the Chinese sports system were punished for using or handing out banned drugs. 2 years after that, just 2 years before Yao was drafted, another 21 athletes were cut from national teams due to shady drug test results. These are just a few of the examples of the suspicious methods that some Chinese national teams were using at the time. And again, I am not saying for sure that Yao used PEDs or anything that was illegal. What I will say though is that even if he wasn't given anything illegal, at the very least, Yao and other athletes were given daily pills that have to be considered unethical. As according to 2 Shanghai athletes who were in the national program at the time, every athlete was given stimulants to enhance their athletic performance. The dosage of these stimulants was given on a talent basis. The better you were, the more stimulants you were given. And according to these 2 athletes, their coaches told them, don't worry, maybe this will give you a mustache or a deeper voice, but that will disappear after a while. And so guys, we're at the end of this video, and I've gotta say, this is easily one of the darkest conspiracies I've ever looked at. I mean, sure, the Chinese government got what they wanted. Yao Ming would become a star for the Shanghai Sharks, he would become an 8-time NBA All-Star, he would become a Hall of Famer, and so China got the super athlete that they were looking to get. But really, we have to ask ourselves, at what cost? Is it worth it to take children from their homes when they don't want to leave? Is it worth it to force people to play a sport for their entire lives even if they don't want to? Is it worth it to potentially hurt people by using drugs that will make them better at sports? The answer to all of that, if you have some kind of conscience, is no. It's not worth it. In my opinion, China definitely went overboard here. Especially when you consider that for every Yao Ming, someone who really succeeds, there were hundreds, if not thousands of people who were not great at the sport that they were chosen to play, but were still forced to dedicate their entire life to that sport. So again, I gotta say, this story is just very dark. But with that said, I do hope you enjoy the video. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe for videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday around 6 p.m. Eastern time. And if you're already subscribed, thank you guys so much for supporting. You're awesome, we all know this. And before we go guys, I want to give a huge shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. Now, SeatGeek is an app that takes all of the best ticket prices from around the internet and puts them all in one place on their app for you to get the best deal. It's also really easy to see how good every individual ticket's price is because SeatGeek scores every ticket on a scale of 0 to 100 based on how good that ticket's price is. And one of the coolest things is that before you even buy the ticket, you can actually use SeatGeek to see what the view from your seats would be, which is pretty awesome because it's like you're previewing the experience. So if you want the best deals for the best prices, download SeatGeek right now and use the promo code 2KMike for $20 off your first order.